Order. Jessa Sattle to move the motion.
I beg to move that this House has considered measures to improve women's safety while walking, wheeling, cycling and running. It is a pleasure to serve under your chairship, Ms Jardine. Violence against women and girls happens in every corner of life, in our homes, our workplaces, on the internet and also in public. Whether we are commuting or exercising, women and girls across the country risk harm just being out and about. And it is the threat of harm that hangs over women's decisions and moulds them. Those cycling home from work, for example, may weigh up whether to take the direct route home or the safer route home, the one that is lit, the one that is busier, but not too busy. In preparing for today's debate, I was contacted by a woman who led a female running group in Hampshire for over 11 years. During that time, she said, there was not a single week where women in my group, or I personally, did not experience some form of unwanted attention while running. She continued, this ranged from so-called micro incidents like sarcastic clapping, comments about our bodies, unsolicited advice shouted from passing vehicles, through to more serious incidents, including being filmed while warming up, having objects thrown at us, and one time being physically assaulted. Unfortunately, she said, these experiences were not isolated and rare, they were routine. Women's fear and experiences of harassment are often minimised, and I have seen that in the response to announcing this very debate on social media. But when women have to do an unspoken risk assessment of their route every time they want to walk to the shops or take a run, it is a chronic weight around the neck of society. And it is a fear that men don't have to live with day in, day out. As one of my Lowestoft's constituents put it, would a man, when running in the dusk or dark, every time they saw a member of the opposite sex heading towards them, feel a slight fear and feel a sense of relief when they have passed that individual? Would a man tell their partner or friend in advance of the run of their route and the time that they expected to be back? Would a man cautiously look behind them every few metres to see if they were being followed? The threat of harassment and assault is enough to force women to lead smaller lives, less free lives, withdrawing to the safety of being behind the front door. Of course.
Thank the honourable member for giving way and congratulate her on the debate, the timeliness of which should be obvious to us all. She quite rightly alludes to her notifying people by social media of this debate. Would you agree with me that particularly amongst younger males, part of the problem is the internet and the manifestations of many unhealthy lifestyles that are obvious online, and that we need to tackle that in order to have young males understand and appreciate that proper relationships between males and females are something that they should aspire to?
I thank the honourable member for that intervention, and I thoroughly agree. And we know that often women are filmed while they are running. Girls are put off exercising because of the way in which men are creating this material that then can go viral. We've seen this just recently with men who have been using smart glasses to film women in public spaces going about their everyday lives, women who've then been harassed because of simply being in a public space with everything that goes with that. Of course.
To build on the honourable gentleman's point, Girl Guiding have found that 2/3 of girls say that they're put off exercising and going out because of the fear of some of these things we're describing. But particularly when we're having the debate about potentially removing social media from young people, does she agree with me that it's even more important that we ensure that other activities that we want young people to be taking part in are equally available to girls so that they don't feel scared, because otherwise they'll face even more inequality and stigma?
I thank my honourable friend for that intervention, and I absolutely agree, as somebody who has firmly supported the idea of a social media ban for under-16s. It is partly because of the huge impact that has on girls and their body image, and that obviously affects the way in which they think about taking part in sporting activities, often in public. But also we know that many of those girls are catcalled, they're whistled at, not just by boys their own age, but often by grown men as they come back from school. that in itself has a chilling effect on their decisions to engage in sport and other activities. Last year, I was glad to invite Dr. Caroline Miles, a researcher on the abuse of women runners, to meet with the Safeguarding Minister to discuss the very issue in front of us today. Alongside Professor Rose Broad, her colleague, their research found that 82% of women they surveyed had safety concerns while running, and 68% had experienced abuse whilst out running, but only 5% had reported it to the police. Of those who experienced abuse, 91% received it verbally, 29% were followed, and 10% were sexually flashed. That is illegal. Indeed, very recently, a man exposed himself to a woman on our seafront in Lowestoft when she was out on her daily walking route, something that has had a profound impact on her sense of outdoor safety. The researchers also looked at the 81 offences recorded by Greater Manchester and Merseyside Police in 2021 and 2022, and found that over 40% were sexual offences. The university researchers have identified 3 areas in which they think the government could go further. Firstly, improved space design. Second, police training. And thirdly, challenging societal attitudes. I'm very glad to see that this government's Violence Against Women and Girls strategy, launched just before Christmas, makes reference to the fact that well-lit streets, accessible transport and thoughtful urban design can deter violence and reduce opportunities for harm. And we now need to see national design guidance reflect the concern for violence against women and girls. The strategy states that tackling VAUG must be embedded in the training of every police officer as a fundamental requirement. And yesterday's Policing White Paper sets out that the College of Policing is currently developing, with the new National Centre for VAUG, a programme for frontline officers on the core skills needed to respond to crimes like domestic abuse, sexual violence, stalking, but also harassment, and I hope that includes harassment outdoors. That training should learn from the best practice that already exists across a number of forces. For example, the Jog On campaign, as part of which undercover female officers posed as joggers to catch perpetrators. It is vital that we encourage women who are harassed out running, cycling or walking to report it, and to ensure that they feel that in reporting it, they will be taken seriously.
On that issue, sorry. I'm very grateful indeed to my honourable friend for giving way. She's making an incredibly powerful case. Just on the issue of reporting, I raised as a written question with the Department of Transport last summer the question of what they were doing to improve reporting mechanisms for women cyclists who'd been harassed or intimidated. At that stage, there was a suggestion that this might be covered by the VAUG strategy. There is an admirable focus on women's safety in public transport, but does she agree with me that we need to be doing more to make sure reporting mechanisms are amenable to women and indeed girls who suffer this kind of abuse and intimidation? Thank you.
I thank my honourable friend for her intervention, and I absolutely agree. It's one of the reasons why I took these University of Manchester researchers to meet with the Safeguarding Minister. And I very much hope, given that the VAUG strategy is a living, breathing document across a big 10-year period, that this is something that we can make sure is in future variations of the strategy. It is so incredibly important. The long-term programme of awareness and training and behaviour change at the heart of that strategy aims to drive a societal response that empowers victims and deters perpetrators. And this will, in the medium and long term, drive the change we wish to see.
My honourable friend for giving way and for her excellent speech on this important subject. As well as reporting, it's important, I'm sure she'd agree, that we have to gather intel in advance from women about where they don't feel safe and where they do. And I wondered if she'd join me as a fellow East Anglia MP in welcoming the campaign launched by the Norwich Cycling Campaign, which is a women's safety audit, which has just been launched to hear from women locally about their experiences, whether it might be harassment, but also in terms of safe routes to cycle on. And I'm encouraging my constituents to take part in that. And does she recognise the value of community-led initiatives such as this?
I thank you. I thank my honourable friend for your intervention as a fellow East Anglian MP, and absolutely would praise Norwich Cycling for their women's safety audit. It is a model that I'm sure many local areas should follow. In the medium and long term, of course, what we want to see is a real change here. We found a poll conducted by the Cycle to Work Coalition in 2024 found that safety concerns deter 45% of potential cyclists from commuting by bike. And although this is obviously broader than harassment, there is certainly a gendered element to this, given that women are 3 times more likely to fear cycling to work than men.
Thank you. I thank the Honourable Lady for giving way and congratulate her on securing this debate. Would you congratulate, along with me, Newbury Road Club, Newbury Velo and West Berkshire Spokes, who in October last year organised a glow ride as part of Cycling UK's My Ride, Our Right campaign, and that if we had segregated cycle lanes, that would help improve all cyclists' safety on the roads, including women.
I thank the Honourable Member for his intervention and obviously would love to congratulate Newbury Road Club and the other organisations who are highlighting Cycling UK's My Ride, Our Right, who have been very, very active in this discussion about women's safety in cycling, and I'll come on to segregated cycle lanes. In these dark winter months, safety concerns can often be at their greatest. Research by Sport England's This Girl Can campaign found that 72% of women worry about their personal safety when it's dark, and they've changed their behaviour as a result. And this has knock-on impacts. As one of my constituents wrote to me, if women feel unsafe or intimidated in these spaces, we lose more than just an exercise route. We lose a vital lifeline for our health. Indeed, to protect themselves, women are forced into more expensive, less healthy options to get around, like driving. And the many benefits of active travel, including the long-term public health savings, are lost. A study by Finnish researchers, for example, found that active travel reduces absences from work. And TfL has found that people who walk to their high streets spend 40% more in local shops. This is also replicated for those who cycle to our local high streets. Cycling in particular requires the physical environment to reflect the needs of women and girls to be safe. Cycling UK have found that 45% of women say that direct traffic-free paths to town centres would encourage them to cycle more, and 39% say physically separated cycle lanes would make the biggest difference. Also, polling from Cycling UK from 2018 found that 50% of respondents in London saw a lack of separate cycle lanes as a barrier to cycling. But thanks to large-scale investment in a network of cycling and walking infrastructure in our capital, the same survey in 2025 saw that concern halved. That model ought to be replicated throughout the country. I therefore look forward to the government's cycling and walking investment strategy later this year and hope to see that investment in infrastructure explicitly reflects the very real barriers that women and girls face, particularly given that the gender gap in cycling has widened since 2018. 9 in 10 female cyclists have experienced abuse whilst on the road, and 63% said it occurred at least once a month. As a result of these experiences, over 20% of these women said they had given up cycling, temporarily or permanently. And so I hope in the strategy to see a target and a plan to reduce the gender gap in active travel. There are a wealth of organisations in this space, and I'm sure the Minister and her department will be encouraged to continue to consult meaningfully with these organisations in preparing and implementing the strategy. Like all of us, I want to see my girls, my children, grow up with the freedom to enjoy the outdoors, to live healthy lives, and to travel safely wherever they want to. Our constituents rightly demand that freedom, and we must answer their call. We must be able to live in a society where women don't need to walk down the street, clasping their keys in their hand or pretending to be on the phone to someone just to protect themselves. Girl Guiding's latest Girls' Attitude Survey found that 68% of girls aged 11 to 21 have changed their everyday behaviour in the last year to avoid sexual harassment. Of that 68%, 12% say they have changed where they exercise, and 11% say they have changed the type of exercise they do. I won't stop fighting for a society in which that 68% becomes 0%. Thank you.
Can I remind members that they should bob if they wish to be called in the debate? And at the moment, I would advise an informal time limit of 5 minutes. The question is that this House has considered women's safety while walking, wheeling, cycling and running. Fiona Hobhouse.
Thank you, Mr. Jardine. It's a pleasure to serve with you in the chair. Now, I am a cyclist. I love cycling. I've always cycled since I cycled to school as a 6-year-old. I cycled throughout my life as a university student. And I still cycle today. I see it as a way of transport. For me, it's not a sporting activity. It's very much my choice of transport. But only recently, in Bath, I was going to cross a road to the right, and I stopped. And then the driver next to me pulls his window down and comments on my skirt. Me, you know, I mean, a 65-year-old woman, on my skirt. And I was so shocked that I wanted to get away and nearly then went into a car because, you know, I made that mistake because I was so shocked. Cycling is not a very safe way of transport anyway, but being harassed is making it even less safe. Women want to cycle, yet today only 1 in 4 cycling trips are made by women. That's not because women don't want to cycle. Almost 60% of women limit how much they cycle because of safety concerns. 1 in 5 women have stopped cycling altogether, if we've already heard, after feeling intimidated by drivers, just like I did. This is clearly more than just a personal issue. It is a public policy issue. We must build the infrastructure that makes women feel safe, visible, and supported on the road. Too often, women are forced to choose between 2 unsafe options: dark, isolated roads or busy roads without protection. If we had built well-lit, segregated and visible routes, especially for evening and nighttime travel, far more women would feel safe and confident in cycling. Cycling UK's campaign, My Right, Our Right, calls for women's safety to be embedded in all transport and safety strategies, including the upcoming cycling and walking investment strategy, and I echo that call today. This strategy must include measurable targets that improve women's safety, including clear goals to increase the proportion of cycling trips made by women. The draft strategy already recognises that investment in well-lit, safe, high-quality walking and cycling routes increases feelings of personal safety, and that, of course, includes men and boys and children, but it is particularly important for women. And this particularly supports the government's work to tackle violence against women and girls. Cycling UK is urging the government and Active Travel England to update design guidance LTN 1-20, strengthening standards for lighting and nighttime safety, and introducing gender-responsive safety audits for all new active travel schemes. I very much hope to see these measures in the final strategy. Right now, the UK lags behind many of our European neighbours. And I mean, I would say that also starts with allowing children to cycle at an early age to school. There are a lot of things that we can do to encourage young people to take up cycling in schools. I became a lifelong cyclist because I started early. Fewer than 1 in 5 people walking, wheeling or cycling on an average day compared to more than 1 in 4 across Europe. Now is the time to change that.
Yeah. Keira Entwistle.
To serve under your chairship, and I thank my honourable friend, the member for Lowestoft, for securing this really important and timely debate. Chair, put simply, women aren't safe running, walking, cycling, or simply just existing. We're not safe in our own homes, we're not safe in pubs, bars, restaurants, at school or at work, and crucially for the purposes of this debate, not even at the gym. Girls are at risk too. How many of us have stories that start in our school uniform? When I was at school, men in cars slowed down beside me. Men in white vans asked where I was going. Grown men followed me and asked to wear my glasses, although I don't have them on today. And being the daughter of a prison officer, I was educated early, not in confidence, but in caution. My dad would say, don't take your phone out when you're walking home. Don't listen to music on the walk home. Stay alert. Cross the road if a man's behind you. Walk with your keys between your fingers. And that doesn't just disappear when you grow up. Only last week, going for a run in Bolton, I shared my location with my family over WhatsApp, just in case. Just in case. Those words tell you everything. I wear a running vest with a phone pocket. I clip my SOS fob to my clothes. I plan my route like a risk assessment, and that's not the point.
And that's the point. Men don't exercise with contingency plans, but we absolutely have to. And when it comes to exercise, women are constrained by the hours we can safely be outdoors. Even in daylight, safer doesn't mean safe. And after dark, many feel pushed indoors. And here's the bitter irony. A lot of us can only exercise when it's dark because we are still primary caregivers. We still do the school runs. We still care for our elderly or disabled relatives and for our children with additional needs. Society relies and depends on that care, and then acts surprised when women's lives are more restricted and when we are forced to pay for safety. For many women, a gym membership is the price of feeling secure enough to exercise at all. Yes, women-only spaces in gyms are growing, and that's progress. But where is the acknowledgement that many are paying simply to do what others can do for free? Exercise without fear. Let's be clear, this is not a confidence gap, it's a safety gap rooted in our environment and in our systems. In winter, nearly 3/4 of women change their outdoor exercise routine for safety, and more than 4 in 5 say they feel unsafe in parks at night. And I know most of us avoid parks altogether. That's... Yes, I'll give way.
Thank my honourable friend very much for giving way. In the south side of Glasgow, we're very lucky to have some wonderful parks and green spaces, but I often hear from women in my constituency who don't feel safe going through them. And the Light the Way campaign, which has been led by Clyde Radio, is campaigning for better lighting in parks, including in Queen's Park in the south side of Glasgow. So we should join with me in paying tribute to that campaign, but also to encourage councils to make park lighting a priority so that women can feel safe in their own space.
I thank him for that intervention, and he makes a really important point, one that I will also come on to later, that well-lit spaces will make the world of a difference for so many women and girls. The safety gap I mentioned earlier is also written into our transport patterns. In Greater Manchester, women make under a third of cycling trips, and when women say why, they talk about traffic danger, harassment and intimidation. One Bolton resident told me that routes can feel pleasant by day but unusable after dark, and that one incident can be enough to stop you cycling altogether. Women's participation in outdoor exercise is already lower than men's, but the safety gap widens again for women from ethnic minority backgrounds who face higher levels of harassment on the streets. Black, Asian and minority ethnic women are nearly 20% less likely than white women to exercise outdoors regularly and half as likely to cycle to work. And if we bear in mind the ethnicity pay gap and the gender pay gap, we're also less likely to actually be able to afford a gym membership. And in Bolton, I'm proud of the grassroots work making a difference. Horwich Rides, Social's women-only rides, Crim's Girls Youth Club's Glow Rides, and the United We Run campaign, which gives thousands of Bolton women access to the Her Spirit fitness app. These initiatives, while brilliant, are also a warning sign. Women should not need safety in numbers. It's time we address women's safety properly, as we should have done for decades. And firstly, that starts by building routes that we can actually use. So that comes back to the well-lit, connected routes that we mentioned earlier. And as my honourable friend, the member for Lowestoft, said, treat harassment as public safety, make it easier to report and make it clear that it will be taken seriously. And finally, put women's safety into transport planning from day one and and ensure progress is measured so that we can check whether the gender gap is closing in cycling and walking. Thank you.
Anna Sabine.
Thank you, I don't know why I can't say that. Thank you, Ms Jardine. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for Lowestoft for bringing forward this really important debate. I'm very passionate about women's safety, especially in semi-rural areas like Froome and East Somerset. It's not an abstract policy discussion. As has been discussed, it's about the constant calculations women make every day. Do I take the longer, better lit route? Do I run before dawn or do I wait until daylight? Do I walk home or do I pay for a taxi I can't really afford? These decisions are so ingrained that many women barely register them anymore, and it shouldn't be accepted. It's not normal. No one should have to limit their freedom of movement because they feel unsafe. Last year, I met a constituent called Holly, who'd been the victim of repeated incidents of flashing when she was out walking in her village in Somerset. As a result of talking to Holly, I launched a survey in my constituency to hear directly from women about safety in rural areas. With nights getting darker, I wanted to understand how safe women feel getting to work, socialising, or simply going about their daily lives. The responses were sobering. Women spoke about being followed on dark country lanes with no street lighting, waiting for buses on isolated roads with no shelter or CCTV, giving up running and cycling altogether because it simply didn't feel safe, and above all, about the constant vigilance required just to get home. Rural areas face particular challenges. Public transport is limited and street lighting is sparse or non-existent. Communities are spread out and mobile signal is often unreliable. The scale of the problem is clear. UN Women UK found that 71% of women have experienced sexual harassment in public spaces, yet most never report it because they believe nothing will be done. The government is absolutely right to call violence against women and girls a national emergency, and I know the very real commitment that members of this government have to this issue. But currently there's a glaring gap between government departments when it comes to planning policy. Just days before publishing its new Violence Against Women and Girls strategy, the government also published a revised national planning policy framework with no reference at all to women, girls or gendered safety. And that omission matters. The places we build determine whether women feel safe walking home, waiting for a bus or going for a run. Planning policy is one of the most powerful tools we have to prevent harm before it occurs, and a place can't credibly be described as healthy if half the population feels unable to use it safely after dark. We know what works: good lighting, clear sightlines, active streets, safe transport routes, and design that considers how women actually experience public space. But without explicit national policy, women's safety becomes a postcode lottery. My ask to the Minister today is that if we truly believe in a whole-of-society approach to ending violence against women and girls, then women's safety must be designed into our streets, paths, transport networks and public spaces, not just bolted on as an afterthought. Will the Minister talk with her colleagues in MHDLG and the Home Office about the importance of this joined-up thinking? Women are not asking for the impossible. They're asking for the freedom to move through their own communities safely. So let's commit to making that a reality. Thank you.
Amanda Martin.
Thank you, Ms Jardine. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship, and I'd like to thank the member for Lowestoft for considering such an important topic. I myself am an avid runner, having taken part in the Great South Run and a 4.5k my way to raise awareness for male suicide. I'm also pleased that in the up and coming I'll be running with On the Tools a 7k and hopefully one of the women MPs running the London Marathon this year. It's a brilliant form of exercise for both your mental health and well-being, because it gets you outside and it clears your mind. But clearing your mind is very difficult when you are worried about your own safety. Women and girls should feel safe exercising in public, yet I know for so many that is not a reality. When I leave my house, I do say to my kids jokingly, if I'm not back in 45 minutes, send out the police. But that's not a joke. Studies have found that 70% of women have experienced an intimate and intimidating incident while running. A rise in issues of social media and online abuse and videoing is making this worse. Constituents have contacted me out of concern for the safety of women and young girls who run and jog in Portsmouth. They talked of their 15-year-old daughter who loves going on runs, but despite doing what she felt were all the right things, like only going out in daylight hours, she had been catcalled and verbally harassed on multiple occasions. Not only are they distressed for their daughter, but her reaction worried them too. She was taken aback at first, but then insisted on shaking it off and feeling as though reporting it would just be a waste of police time. However, like her parents, I feel that she shouldn't have to put up with this. And she is not alone. Others have reported aggressive behaviour, bunching around them as they're running, stepping out in front of them, throwing things and saying, "Why don't you just smile at me, you grumpy cow?" We do not want our girls to experience this brazen, misogynistic behaviour any longer. It's upsetting but not surprising that women and girls have to deal with this kind of harassment and the added mental load of worrying about their safety from such a young age. If we socialise our young girls to simply brush off this kind of abuse, we are harming society as a whole. And as we know, low-level harassment of women can be a gateway to more serious crimes. We need to take this persistent and common harassment more seriously. We don't want women and girls to feel they're unable to participate on the grounds of their gender. And whilst I welcome the government strategy to build a safe society for women and girls using a whole-society approach, and I welcome wholly the government's VORG strategy in prioritising prevention and getting to the root of its causes, like this normalisation of women and girls feeling unsafe while walking, wheeling and cycling and running, we have to do this vitally as a cross-government department and working. We must join up the Home Office, the Department for Transport, MCHLG, DSIT and so many others so that our young women and girls feel safe when they are outside exercising.
Jim Shannon.
Again, a real pleasure to serve under your chairship, but a big thank you to the Honourable Lady for Lowestoft for setting the scene incredibly well and giving us all by her debate a chance to speak in this matter. The situation in Northern Ireland regarding women's safety is incredibly worrying, Madam Chair, and of course equally as concerning for the rest of the United Kingdom, as the Honourable Lady and others have indicated. But the stats speak for themselves back home, and I want to be here to represent that and have that conversation. The Honourable Lady referred to smart glasses. I have to say that until last Wednesday, I was watching TV. I didn't even know there was such a thing as smart glasses, and the way that they can have a camera that's concealed in such a way, you nearly have to have a close-up inspection of them. So I'm not sure, Minister, what can be done in relation to that, but it's something, if there's a problem, and quite clearly there is, and there's many examples on that TV programme last week, maybe the Minister can give us an indication of what can be done. There's been an increasingly negative perception of safety in public places, especially amongst women. One we always associate as most notable was the tragic and the very heart-rending murder of Sarah Everett, who was walking home in London when she was kidnapped, raped and murdered by a policeman. Of all things in this world, Madam Chair, it's inconceivable the horror that lady must have had whenever she expected protection but got the very opposite. NISRA have revealed that in Northern Ireland, significantly more men reported feeling safe for the women, and 68% of men feeling safe, and only 27% of women feel safe in Northern. A devastating low figure. These shared public spaces are also widely used for the likes of running, walking, and cycling. A separate survey by Queen's University in Belfast found that only 43% felt safe walking alone on a public street or on a public transport. And official crime stats show that sexual offences in Northern Ireland have risen significantly over the past decade and remain a serious concern tied to women's safety in public places. I want, and indeed we all want, us to live in a society where individuals, and women in particular, do not have that fear in terms of being out in public. There's some fantastic helplines, Madam Chair, for example, StrutSafe, just as one example, where you can in fact call a helpline and a volunteer will stay on the phone with you and chat until you get home. Something that can really help. It is sad and unfortunate that a service like this must exist, but we are grateful that they're there and are taking extra steps to protect the public whilst they are in public. Many universities also carry out services like this also. I know it's not the Minister's responsibility for education, but I just wonder maybe the Minister could tell us if she's had them discussions with the Education Minister to ensure when it comes to schools that girls are safe, when it comes to universities that young women are safe as well. The PCSP events back home and others similar to it have also noted an increasing number of women looking to obtain a personal alarm for their own safety. I know the PSNI back home do that. If ladies want an alarm, they can get an alarm that makes a high-pitched noise, which sometimes would distract the person involved, and that can be helpful. They can carry out in public with them should they feel unsafe. This demand reflects the argument that simply women are afraid and feel frightened, and more must be done to ensure that this fear isn't there. In my constituency, and maybe in others, and I've noticed in the sports clubs that we have, whether it be the karate, the judo or the boxing, that many young girls and young women are taking up those sports simply so that they can protect themselves. But let's remember this, Madam Chair, I'll try to be very careful with my words. When a man approaches you with intentions that are wrong, you know where he's vulnerable, you kick him hard and at a certain place, and his fervour will leave him right away. Now, when I say with them young girls and women, then they're getting the protection in those clubs, in the karate clubs, in the judo clubs, in the boxing clubs, in Newton Hours, so that they can protect themselves. And that has to be good news for the clubs in my constituency. To conclude, Madam Chair, there's clear evidence of too many women in Northern Ireland further feeling unsafe, walking, running or cycling in public spaces. We must invest in better infrastructure, lighting and policing alongside better community awareness and safety initiatives. So I look to the Minister, I always do. The Minister will respond, I know she will. Our intention is to help us all in our request to making public spaces across the nation feel safe, accessible and welcoming for all women, whether they are in a group or alone. Thank you very much.
Amanda Hack.
It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. I thank the Honourable Member for Lowestoft for giving us the opportunity to speak in such an important debate today for our constituents. But for many of us in the room, we'll be speaking from personal experience and for those people that are close to us too.
Walking, wheeling, cycling and running are sold to us as sports that are easy accessible, particularly walking and running, because you don't need monthly fees and many will have the accessible equipment at home. Just pop your shoes on off you go. But for women, it's nowhere near as accessible as it should be. We hear the phrase, everyone has the same 24 hours a lot, particularly on social media, trying to shame people for not going on a run, not going to the gym, not choosing their bike to go to work instead of the bus. I know a lot of women who will actively choose not to exercise at night because they feel unsafe. Suddenly, those 24 hours are limited to only when it's light outside. If you work at an office during winter hours, those hours are available for you to have a run or a cycle that even feel more restricted. Of course.
In Stevenage, my constituency, we've got one of the best cycling networks in the UK. However, the lighting is absolutely shocking in some places, and that's because they've changed it over the years through LED lighting at Hertfordshire County Council. So does my honourable friend agree that we do need a whole government approach to this at all levels, and we should encourage all our local councils to think about that when they're designing their lighting systems?
Yeah.
I thank my honourable friend for making that intervention, and 58% of women said that their cycle journeys are limited because of safety and the infrastructure that's provided. So incredibly important point. I think, as somebody who has run fairly regularly for a number of years, hassle, sadly though, has been a daytime as well as a nighttime experience. Of course.
For giving way, and as she rightly alluded to, catcalling, being followed or being shouted at by passing cars is something that is a frequent event for many women who go out running, and in my constituency there are lots of really poorly lit paths, poorly lit parks, and this really forces women to limit when they actually go out and run and when they feel safe. So does my honourable friend agree with me that women should not have to choose between doing the exercise that they love and their safety?
I thank my honourable member for that intervention. Absolutely. You know, this is why this debate is so important. We shouldn't be restricting access because we don't feel safe. I think what's really frustrating is, I've been catcalled running when I've been on my own, when I've been with my buddies out running. But saddest for me is during COVID. My 10-year-old daughter just got onto a big bike, and she was faster than me while I was running behind her. And we had comments from a car while we were out. Thankfully, she didn't really understand what had been said, so I won't repeat it here. But I can guarantee you they knew exactly what I thought of their disgusting behaviour. But it did change my approach to my life. And we didn't do that again. We both went cycling together. This is what we have to do all the time. We are constantly compromising on what we can and can't do when we can and can't do it. When there's been a poll on the Facebook group dedicated to Leicester and Leicestershire runners, or something that my run trainer wanted to learn more about his female clients, those comments are inundated by women saying what their experience had been. We have to start changing the way that we feel. It's no surprise that 20% of women never walk at night, and 48% of women in the UK, according to Sport Shoes, feel unsafe while out running. It's shameful. We have to change this. It's been really good to see the government take such a strong stance on violence against women and girls. But this problem is embedded into our infrastructure. As a councillor, part of a bus route was cut. I actually then demonstrated to the bus company what they actually wanted you to do. They wanted you to walk through an unlit path on undangerous roads to get from where the bus was going to stop to the place of business where people needed to go to work. These things are baked in. We have to make these are changes for everybody. Footpaths, cycleways must be built with women's safety in mind, not just cost-cutting measures where we put less lampposts, less lighting, or weave cycle lanes well away from main lit roads because it's just cheaper. Those are the compromises that shouldn't be taken. Too often, cost saving, sadly, is women prohibiting. Safer streets get us to work and exercise. It can have huge benefits. If you can't drive and public transport you live isn't very reliable, like in my constituency of North West Leicestershire, cycling can also open up more doors for work, for education and seeing your families and friends. Helping us feel safe while running, walking and wheeling would mean women are so much more likely to exercise, helping ease some of the strain on our NHS and other services, helping us keep fit and active.
Dr Scott Arthur.
Thank you, Ms Jardine. It's a pleasure to serve under you today, and I do want to thank the member for Lowestoft for introducing this debate in such a compassionate way. And as a wannabe runner, I can't claim to be a runner, I do want to thank all the people who have been talking about running, on behalf of myself and also my son and daughter, who are both keen runners. In Edinburgh, the gold standard for active travel routes were our canal path and converted railway tracks. Across the city, these converted railway tracks offer routes away from busy roads that are used for thousands of journeys every year. In my constituency, a national cycle route runs alongside the Waterloo Leith. This route used to be the Balerno branch line, and it provides a space for active travellers to enjoy a quiet and beautiful route away from traffic. I use this route regularly and feel incredibly lucky to be able to enjoy it as I travel through my constituency. It's one of the things that defines my constituency. But I say these routes were the gold standard. This is because in 2021, the tragic death, or the brutal death, of Sarah Everard, so far away from Edinburgh, heightened an ongoing conversation about women's safety in public spaces. In Edinburgh, the safety of our active travel routes came to the forefront. And at this point, I do have to thank Councillor Mandy Watt, who showed amazing leadership on this and quite quickly allocated around £500,000 to light some of the routes through our parks. Routes along old railway lines, Chair, and canal paths that offer enjoyable, smooth, green and quiet routes during the day change in the darkness. Even with lighting, without the passive surveillance found in busier public areas, I know women often feel unable to use these routes or feel unsafe when they do so, and the Chair will know this from Roseburn Path in her constituency. During the winter, when it is dark, often from around 3 p.m. to 9 a.m. in Edinburgh, these routes become less accessible for much of the day. This has a significant impact for those who rely on them to travel to work or for leisure. The last Edinburgh Walking and Cycling Index showed a 7% difference between the perception of safety between men and women, with, of course, women feel much less safe. In many cases, this prevents women from integrating active travel into their daily lives, and we've heard about that from other speakers. But also pushes women who had previously walked or cycled to stop, and that's not good for them, and it's not good for us or our economy. And I think all of us want to, it's worth pointing out, all of us want to live in a town, city or village where more people do walk, run or cycle. And I think it's a tragedy that often these investments and these changes can be so controversial, because it's something we all aspire to, all of us. It's about how we do it, I think. On top of this, too many women face harassment, with one study in Edinburgh showing around 20% of women cyclists stop after experiencing a single event of harassment. Unsafe routes decrease women's ability to travel easily around the city, and no doubt reduce the mental and physical benefits that come with active travel. Ensuring safe routes in busier areas through the creation of separate, well-maintained cycle lane on road, for example, are one of the ways that we can ensure that those who feel unsafe using our canals and former railway tracks are still able to actively travel during the winter months and at night. And I do want to thank the Infra Sisters in Edinburgh, who have been running a fantastic campaign over many years, and I'm sure the Chair is aware of their work. As walking and cycling routes reach the city centre, it is also vital that we have the correct architecture and infrastructure to ensure women's safety in busier areas as they travel home or to work. In a public consultation run in 2023, up to 80% of women who responded stated they had experienced harassment, abuse or violence in public spaces in Edinburgh. Now, some people might think 80% is an exaggeration, and I did when I first read that stat. But when you speak to women, you find that it's absolutely not. And I was ashamed to hear some of the experiences that they had had. They're very happy to.
is he not absolutely shocked how much this is just normalised? That we actually accept this as normal? And I would also say that my male partners, sons, they just don't realise what happens, and therefore we continue to just normalise it. Is it not time we absolutely stop normalising that behaviour?
Absolutely. I mean, as a cyclist in Edinburgh, I have been verbally abused by drivers, and often I'm criticised on my social media page for wanting to encourage more people to walk and cycle. But that's very different from abuse which is based on someone's gender, which really does get to the heart of who you are rather than simply what you're doing. So I really do thank you for making that point. So the feelings of safety of women in Edinburgh varied seasonally by lighting and by the presence of passive surveillance from other citizens. Variation was also found between different groups, with disabled women and BAME women more likely to experience some form of harassment. This is in Scotland's capital city. It's absolutely shameful reading this, actually. There are seemingly small things that we can implement to improve this situation. Providing multiple points for road crossings, improved street lighting and increasing on-street passive surveillance can make a difference. And this is something we integrate into our urban design in Edinburgh now. The safety of women on public transport deserves a debate in its own, but ensuring that women can safely access public transport, either by walking and cycling, should be actively considered. We have to look at those routes between communities and those key public transport routes, ensuring that they're safe and, above all, ensuring that they're well lit, and the bus stop in particular, ensuring that it is well lit. And all these small changes can improve safety on women walking around both our city centres and the outlying neighbourhoods. And very quickly, I want to give two examples. Recently had lighting installed in Hales Quarry Park in my constituency. That's made such a change for local travel. And also Collington Tunnel, which I'm sure Ms Jardine is familiar with, 120 metres long. Lighting was added. I thought nothing of this. It should just be a dark tunnel. But so many women came forward and said it transformed how they walked along that route, just having lighting in place. Cheap and easy and transformational. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anna Dixon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship, Ms Jardine, and I'd really like to congratulate my honourable friend, the member for Lowestoft, not only for securing this debate, but for her fantastic opening speech, which really set the scene. Violence against women and girls, including sexual harassment and assault, obviously affects millions of women across the UK. It affects what we say, what we wear, what we do. It affects how we live our everyday lives. And as we have heard from so many honourable members in this debate, whether and where we walk, cycle and run. 20% of women say, this I think is a national survey, say they would never go walking at night. Local research undertaken by West Yorkshire Combined Authority and the University of Leeds found similarly stark findings. They did a survey specifically of users of Myrtle Park in Bingley in my constituency, where they found that 48% of respondents wouldn't feel safe at night. According to the ONS, over 15% of women and girls in Britain feel very or fairly unsafe in parks during the day. It is a scandal that women feel unsafe while walking, wheeling, cycling and running. And, as we've heard, it's also harmful to our health and well-being. Increasing active travel by 50% in England would result in 1.8 million fewer GP visits and 4 million fewer sick days. So it is vital that we provide opportunities, safe opportunities, for women and girls to participate in active travel. The Mayor of West Yorkshire, Tracy Braben, has really led the way in this area, not only by publishing her Safety of Women and Girls strategy, but going on to produce specific guidance called Safer Parks, which she commissioned. The guidance sets out in detail how to address the inequity of access to parks, promoting the need, as we've heard, for parks to be designed in a way that makes women and girls feel more secure in a space. And interestingly, having been briefed on the research, the most obvious things like lighting the path through the park actually don't always result in people feeling safer, because you're in the spotlight and you fear that the attackers are hiding in the shadows. So it's really important we do the research and we get the design guidance right.
and also to address different barriers that exist for different groups, and generally increasing the number of people using the parks. That's something that makes us feel safer. The guidance was trialled in Bradford last year and will hopefully inform planning for how we improve safety in parks for women and girls, both across West Yorkshire and beyond. Like West Yorkshire Combined Authority, Bradford Council is treating this issue with the seriousness it deserves, and I recently met with the Council to discuss the safety concerns of women visiting Myrtle Park, and I will continue to engage with them, the Friends of Myrtle Park, a fantastic community group, and the local councillor Susan Fricker, who's been a really strong advocate on this issue. Finally, I've been pleased with some of the initiatives by West Yorkshire Police. Jog On is a campaign dedicated to tackling the harassment faced by female runners and joggers. It seeks to raise awareness of inappropriate behaviour, provide education, including through active bystander training, and take enforcement action against individuals who persist in targeting runners with unwanted behaviours such as catcalling, horn pipping or sexualised comments. And on my request, Jog On recently attended the park runs in both Myrtle Park and Roberts Park in Saltaire within my constituency, encouraging and advising women who enjoy park run but may also want to go out and run at other times of the day and week. So to conclude, Madam Chair, women and girls must feel confident to get out and about on their bikes and feel safe in our parks and green spaces. And I would add to that, along our canals and our greenways, I'm campaigning for the Wharfdale Greenway in my constituency, and I'm going to highlight that it must be designed with the safety of women and girls in mind, following my honourable friend's excellent points about Edinburgh. And I hope the Minister will encourage the sharing of these positive initiatives from West Yorkshire and Bradford, and I hope that she will, with colleagues, also ensure that local authorities have the funding and guidance that they need to be able to secure the safety of women and girls in all our public spaces. Thank you.
Thank you. Josh Fenton-Glynn, please.
Thank you, Ms Jardine. It's an honour to serve under your chairship. I refer the House to my register of interest as chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Running. It's a pleasure to speak in this debate, and I thank the Honourable Member for Lowestoft for bringing it forward, and also for her constant work on this area. Because running should be available to everyone as a form of exercise, stress relief and mental regulation, but it's simply not, because it's only available to people who feel safe to do it. The reality is that too many women do not feel safe when running. And when we put it plainly, 70% of women say that they've experienced an intimidating incident while running. 2 out of 3 women have faced harassment. These aren't isolated experiences, they show a pattern that forces women to adapt their behaviour. Women change their routes, they avoid running in the dark, they stop altogether. It's not freedom, it's women adjusting their lives because of the behaviour of men. I'm a member of a running club, and there are many running clubs in my constituency of Calder Valley which are available to make women feel safer because there is safety in numbers, and I pay tribute to those clubs, particularly the all-female running clubs we have, such as the St Paul Striders, who create these spaces, but they shouldn't be relied upon, and women shouldn't have to do things differently. And men who make women feel unsafe have got to face consequences, because we know that serious offenders begin with acts of harassment. If we want to prevent worse crimes, we cannot ignore the early ones. We need to make reporting easier, and we need to make follow-up stronger. And we need systems that take women seriously when they come forward. Now, I represent a constituency which has large rural areas, so simple solutions like better lighting or planning just can't be relied upon where I am. And fundamentally, it comes down to how seriously these complaints are taken. I'm reminded of 2 very similar incidents that happened while I was a councillor, of men exposing themselves to female walkers. They happened about 5 years apart. One, the police didn't take the action very seriously at all, and one they did. In the first one, the policeman, I suspect, spent more time complaining to me about people posting about the crime on social media than they did following it up. But actually, things have changed in West Yorkshire, not out of the ether, but because of leadership. Alison Lowe, our Deputy Mayor for Policing, has really changed how things are looked at, and it's made a huge difference. And fundamental to good outcomes is an institutional recognition of the problem. We need our police to lead from the front, to take victims seriously, and to be proactive in their information and support. Running should be for everyone. It should not depend on gender or postcode or the time of day. If we want more people to enjoy the benefits of running, then we must make sure women feel safe enough to take part. That means consequences for harassment, proper lighting, easier reporting, and support for the communities that bring people together. Thank you very much.
I'd like to move to the front benches at 15:28 if possible. John Slinger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's an honour to serve under your chairship, and I pay tribute to my honourable friend, the member for Lowestoft, for her assiduous campaigning and for bringing this important issue to the Chamber. This is a problem that women suffer, but the problem is caused by men, not all men, of course, and men must be part of the main part of the solution, because women's spaces are being constricted. Women are being forced to take exercise in more public places and to avoid those footpaths and canal towpaths, and parents of daughters will have had those conversations with them. But then when they do move into the more public places that are better lit and are supposedly safer, they then face intimidation, catcalling and the like. And this is a total outrage, as my honourable friend has said. If it were happening to men, it would be dealt with very rapidly, I can assure you of that. Women are adapting their behaviour, but it's men's behaviour and men's attitudes that needs adapting, confronting and changing, and yes, on occasion, prosecuting. Many men and boys don't even know that they're doing anything wrong, but actually they're intimidating women and they're shrinking their status and their freedom as citizens. And so we need a multifaceted approach, which of course the government is taking through the VORG strategy, encompassing education, public education, policing, criminal justice system work and more. But it's clearly not something that can be prosecuted out of existence. However, part of the challenge is to defeat the defeatism, and more can be done and is being done. People would instinctively tell you that if you mention catcalling, they would probably say, oh, that can't be dealt with. How could you prosecute it? However, as we've heard about Operation Jog On, it is possible for police to take action. I just want to briefly touch on the work of Warwickshire Police and Rugby Police in particular. They have a Safer Neighbourhood team which is carrying out work with VORG walks. It has an enhanced policing initiative on Friday and Saturday nights promoting Ask Angela. They have Project Vigilant, where officers are trained to detect predatory behaviour. They've set up a working group where they're looking at surveys from the park run to walking groups and so on, so that they can get the data and work out whether they also would like to carry out an operation similar to Jog On, the one that was carried out by Surrey Police. And they also do lots of education in schools. So really, Madam Chair, we need to ensure that there are no no-go areas for women and girls in our society. And we need to commit to working more to tackle the misogynistic, predatory behaviour of some men and some boys. And they need to be the people who are feeling worried and intimidated when they are going into public spaces or any other spaces with those attitudes and perpetuating those attitudes. And with that, I'll end my comments. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Liberal Democrat spokesperson Marie Goldman, please.
Thank you, Ms Jardine. It is a genuine pleasure to serve under your chairship. And I pay tribute to the Honourable Member for Lowestoft for securing this really important debate. As Honourable Members have already set out, abuse and violence experienced by women and girls in public spaces is horrifyingly prevalent and should be called out for what it is, which is a national emergency. I want to just pay tribute to some of the things that Honourable Members from across the House have said this afternoon, in particular the Honourable Member for Lowestoft, who did start the debate in such a wonderful way, I think, and really set the tone, and really highlighted things that we all know as women, but that still need highlighting, shockingly, when she spoke about there being about women having to choose the direct or safest route home.
And about that unspoken risk assessment that we all do, those words really rang true to me as well. The honourable member for Bath talked about her personal experience of harassment while cycling and the importance of encouraging children to start cycling early. The member for Bolton North East, just in case, she said, the things that we do just in case, and that really resonated with me. There was the honourable member, my honourable friend, the member for Frome and East Somerset, who talked about her constituent Holly and her call for women's safety to be designed in. I think that's really important. I hope the Minister is listening to that call. And then the member for North West Leicestershire, who said that women are constantly compromising in what they do. And that also rang very true to me. And I also like to highlight the honourable members of the other gender who spoke up so passionately and convincingly when they said that men's behaviour needs to change and that they would champion that as well. So I thank them very much for speaking up about that. A UN Women UK study found that 71% of women of all ages have experienced sexual harassment in public spaces in the UK. There's something my honourable friend, the member for Frome and Somerset, said. That figure increases to a shocking 86% for women aged 18 to 24. Now, part 2 of the Angelini inquiry confirmed in black and white what women already knew, that it's common for us to feel unsafe walking or running in our own streets, and that as women we actively often change our daily routines to avoid very real threats, obviously something highlighted by members across the House. It is also found that sexually motivated crimes against women in public are not prioritised to the same extent as other serious offences. Women have felt this to be true for far too long. A University of Manchester study found that over 2/3 of women runners experience some form of abuse while running, most commonly verbal, with just 5% of them reporting such incidents to the police. This is plainly unacceptable in Britain today. Liberal Democrats have urged the government to implement all 13 of the inquiry's recommendations without delay. The sense of insecurity among women worsens during the winter months, as the lack of safe routes during the dark evenings greatly restricts women travelling for work or leisure, something very much highlighted. Of course I will.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for giving way. In my constituency of Richmond Park, the park itself is a very, very popular spot for runners and for cyclists. But as she points out, during the winter months, it's so much darker. We have recently had our dedicated police force, the Royal Parks Police, completely scrapped, leaving the park now unpatrolled and even less safe, which means that women are not choosing to run in the park at all, and it really reduces their options in terms of safe routes for running or cycling in the winter months. Would you not agree with me that investing in neighbourhood policing, including the policing that we used to have in the Royal Parks, is absolutely critical in terms of women feeling safer?
I thank her very much for her intervention. It's a very timely intervention because in my own constituency, Chelmsford, we're in Essex. Essex Police have literally just announced that they feel that they are going to have to be scrapping numbers from their police force, and that is very, very concerning indeed. And also she highlights the importance of, of women feeling safe in the parks in particular. In my own constituency of Chelmsford, streetlights that were left for years in the dark and unrepaired by Essex County Council left many women feeling unable to take the most direct and quickest route, which was through the park from the station to their home at the end of the day. And as a county councillor, I campaigned hard for these lights to be fixed. I'm very pleased that they did eventually get fixed, but that was actually with the help of the Liberal Democrat-run Chelmsford City Council. But it's hardly surprising that inadequate street lighting and a lack of safe paths to facilitate active travel are widely reported to be significant barriers to women walking in their communities. A report by the Institute for Public Policy Research, the IPPR, in the last 2 years found that chronic underfunding of active travel across England is undermining efforts to get people walking, wheeling and cycling instead of driving, with just 2% of the total transport budget spent on infrastructure to support active travel. Feels like we're putting our money in the wrong places sometimes. And it's disappointing to note, as my honourable friend, the member for Bath, pointed out, that the UK lags behind its European counterparts, with fewer than 1 in 5 people walking, wheeling or cycling on an average day compared to more than 1 in 4 across Europe. The report highlights that this failure has locked in more congestion and contributed to worsening air quality, making it harder to reduce emissions while also limiting growth.
You might wonder why I mentioned that, but we also know that higher levels of pollution intersect with racial and wealth inequalities, with the most racially diverse and poorest parts of our towns and cities suffering the most. There is also even some evidence that equal exposure to air pollution does not mean equal health outcomes for women and men. For example, some studies have shown that women experience more harmful effects from air pollution than men. More research is, of course, needed, but at the very least this demonstrates the necessity of inclusion when considering the importance of prioritising active travel. The same goes for road safety more generally, and Liberal Democrats have for some time been calling for an updated road safety strategy, so we welcomed its recent publication by the government. My Liberal Democrat colleagues and I also welcome the publication of the pavement parking consultation outcome, albeit 5 years on. Whilst it might seem strange on the surface, women are likely to be disproportionately affected by the inaccessibility caused by pavement parking. Women are more likely to be disabled and have mobility or visual impairment issues than men. We are more likely to be accompanying children and wheeling prams, and are more likely to be carers, as one of the honourable members pointed out earlier. I was therefore pleased to introduce an amendment to the English Devolution Bill in the autumn, which would have enabled local authorities to enforce pavement parking laws more easily, because in these cases pavement parking isn't just a minor inconvenience. It puts people in harm's way, impacts their sense of dignity, and limits access to public space. To the casual observer, it's easy to dismiss some of these small changes as trivial, but these actions make a genuine difference to improving the sense of safety and inclusion for women. Also in Chelmsford, I just very quickly want to mention the organisation Make Space for Girls that's been doing great work to build that inclusive infrastructure which is so important for creating the environments where women feel safe. This project, where girls and gender non-conforming children design their own play spaces, is just as much about creating these safe, comfortable physical environments as it is about proving to these children that they can enact change in their own communities and hold power to shape their own futures. This is important because while while street lighting and safer paths play an essential role, they are ultimately symptomatic of the broader problem that faces our country. That's also why initiatives like Chelmsford City Council's Women's Safety Charter, where local premises commit to a range of training to ensure that staff consider and prioritise women's safety as standard, are also so necessary. Finally, the fact remains that women who are victims of violence are incredibly likely to be known to the men who attack them. We must therefore focus efforts on tackling the societal attitudes which at first look away from, then excuse, and later sometimes justify violence against women and girls. We have a responsibility to change this. It cannot be that in decades' time women are still fearful to walk our streets because of who may be lurking in the dark. We owe it to these future generations of women that we act. My Liberal Democrat colleagues, in fact, I believe members across the House will continue to press the government to do so.
Opposition spokesperson Greg Smith.
Thank you, Ms Jardine. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I congratulate the Honourable Lady for Lowestoft, not just for securing this important debate, but for the powerful way that she opened what has been, across the board, what can only be described as a sobering debate requiring the government's full attention, not just from the Department for Transport, but as others have said, across multiple government departments. And I'd equally like to thank those members that have spoken, particularly the Honourable Lady for Bath, the Honourable Lady for Bolton North West, and the Honourable Lady for North West Leicestershire for sharing their own personal experiences where the examples we heard are deeply unacceptable, that anyone should have to face that on the streets of this country. And I equally agree with the Honourable Gentleman for Calder Valley in his argument that the so-called low-level offences should be stamped down on incredibly forcibly, because he is right, and I have long argued along similar lines, that it is essential that those so-called lower-level crimes will lead to more serious and potentially fatal crimes in the future, and it is therefore absolutely essential that they are clamped down upon incredibly hard. The method that anyone, particularly women, choose to travel should not have to be dictated by how safely they feel when using it. Everyone should feel safe, whether they are walking, running, cycling, wheeling, driving, or another activity that we had a good debate on last week that I think should have been added to the title of this debate, riding a horse, incredibly important in rural communities like my own. It is clear the challenges of securing women's safety are an obstacle to an array of activities women might want to do but feel unable to do. The fact that, according to Cycling UK, 23% of women cite harassment or intimidation as a reason straightforwardly not to cycle is incredibly concerning. Meanwhile, the data around running is even more stark. Research published in 2023 found that almost 3/4 of women in the United Kingdom changed their outdoor activity routines during winter, with many doing so because they feel unsafe. Separately, survey data from the website sportshoes.com, not one that I had been particularly familiar with until research for this speech, found that 48% of women had felt unsafe while running, compared to 36% of men. At the same time, 70% of women had experienced an intimidating incident while running. This behaviour included 22% saying they had been followed and 21% reporting that they had been beeped at by a car, deeply unacceptable on the streets of this country. Even though it is challenging to point to one single source of data, the various pieces from a variety of organisations highlight that there are a considerable number of women who experience behaviour that is clearly despicable and not acceptable in our society. The idea of someone merely trying to run or cycle but who is then followed or harassed is clearly wrong and absolutely must be stopped. Therefore, to address both safety while cycling, wheeling, walking or running and concerns about harassment, we must make sure that we embed enforcement as the underlying principle of these safety strategies. This must involve having sufficient numbers of police officers located in the right areas where women feel most unsafe, which is a challenge given that we are seeing right now a reduction in the number of police officers on our streets. And the example the Honourable Lady for Richmond Park gave was a particularly stark one. The thought that a park like Richmond Park, so suited for walking, for running, for cycling, for all sorts of activities, is no longer to be policed, is something that should horrify all of us in this House, no matter what political party we belong to. It should also involve following up on incidents properly where a small minority of drivers, for example, demonstrate truly unsafe behaviour, putting women at risk. We have strong rules about what constitutes dangerous driving, and these must be enforced where people have broken the law, but those same rules for dangerous driving must equally apply to those that behave in an unacceptable way, verbally or using the car's horn or whatever it might be. To do this, we need effective funding for our police forces, which is why my party has specifically set out £800 million that we would provide for 10,000 new police officers to be deployed in hotspot areas where crime is most likely to occur. I appreciate that hotspot policing may be less impactful for groups such as cyclists who travel much greater distances, but for those running and walking in urban environments or in places like Richmond Park, as we have heard, there are often particular locations and areas which dissuade people from running and walking. The more we can do to target those locations where crime is more likely, particularly crime against women, the more we can instil trust and the sense that such activities are safe. Therefore, I would ask the Minister what cross-government work has been conducted by the Department to feed into the Government strategy on preventing violence against women and girls, to prioritise their safety when doing active travel. Can the Minister make a commitment that they will engage with local forces to ensure they are monitoring areas where women feel most unsafe? Also, I understand that the consultation for the third cycling and walking investment strategy said that, and I quote, investment in well-lit, safe, high-quality walking, wheeling and cycling routes increases feelings of personal safety as well as improving road safety. I think that we can all agree with the sentiment and the principle that we want particular areas to have improved lighting to uphold safety, as with many areas of road safety, targeted measures which focus on the areas which are most dangerous will rightly have support from members across this House. I am aware that issues such as lighting form part of much broader calls for clear targets on what organisations such as Cycling UK describe as high-quality cycling infrastructure alongside appropriate levels of spending is important. And I know that the Minister is a long-standing supporter of active travel and cycling in particular from our time together on the Transport Select Committee in the last Parliament. Evidently, there is always a difficult balance to be drawn between making our roads safe without either prohibiting or making it too difficult to use other modes of transport. But as such, I hope the Government can find the appropriate balance between making cycling safer for women, whilst at the same time not limiting or making it more difficult for those same women to use their cars to make other journeys. One of the requests from both Cycling UK and a range of other road safety organisations is improving understanding of the 2022 changes to the Highway Code. These organisations have been clear about welcoming the changes as an important step in improving the safety of pedestrians, cyclists and other road users, but the knowledge gap still remains regarding the public's awareness of these changes. All in all, as I said at the start of my remarks, this needs a whole government approach. The safety of women cannot be put on some sort of back burner or into some sort of footnote. It must be centre stage across multiple government departments. And I look forward to hearing the Minister's commitments this afternoon in this debate as to what she will be leading in the Department for Transport and across the whole of government.
Thank you, Ms Jardine. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship this afternoon, and I thank my honourable friend for Lowestoft for raising this important issue. And can I also take the opportunity to congratulate her on her appointment as the Violence Against Women and Girls Advisor to the Department of Health and Social Care. I look forward to working with her to help drive forward the government's mission to halve violence against women and girls within a decade. I imagine every woman here today will have recognised the issues under discussion. The honourable members for Bolton North East, for Frome and East Somerset, Portsmouth North, North West Leicestershire, Bath, Shipley and Chelmsford all describe very vividly what these issues mean for women in our daily lives. The fear of male violence is so normal, it is easy to forget that it's anything but normal. And I'm pleased that many men are also committed, including the honourable members for Edinburgh South West, for Strangford, for Rugby, for Calder Valley, and indeed the Shadow Minister are also committed to ensuring that this changes. As we've heard this afternoon, women remain underrepresented in cycling due to persistent safety concerns. 58% of women feel their cycle journeys are limited by safety concerns, and over a third say that roads don't feel safe. Harassment, intimidation and poorly lit routes all contribute to a sense that cycling, particularly in the evening, is simply not a safe or viable option. Research conducted by Dr Caroline Miles and Professor Rose Broad at the University of Manchester found that over a 2-year period from 21 to 22, 68% of women survey respondents said they had experiences of being abused whilst out running, but only 5% of these women had reported the abuse to the police. The scale of... I will give way.
My own friend, the Minister, refers to the excellent research by the University of Manchester, which is also referred to by the Honourable Member for Lowestoft. Within that research, one of the most shocking findings when I discussed it with them last year was that 19% of women runners had been followed and 7% had been flashed at. Does you agree with me that while women are often taking measures to mitigate the threat, whether it's through smartphones, whether it's through special safety apps or even changing their routes, that ultimately the real answer lies with more visible policing, more CCTV, and crucially, when it comes down to local communities, we've got to do better lighting and ultimately tackling at source, as the Violence Against Women strategy does, the misogyny in our schools and in our workplaces.
Well, my honourable friend makes a number of very important points. The scale of violence against women and girls in our country
is intolerable. That's why this government is treating it as a national emergency. But the most important change is a change in the behaviour of men, frankly. The government published its strategy to build a safer society for women and girls last month and has set out a range of actions to prevent violence and abuse, pursue perpetrators and support victims. And giving women the confidence to report incidents is absolutely essential. The strategy includes an ambitious aim to halve violence against women and girls in a decade, which will require us to take a transformative approach to the way that we work across government and with other partners. And I can assure the Shadow Minister that ministers regularly come together from all departments to discuss the action that we need to take. Now, turning to active travel, in December we announced we are allocating £626 million for local authorities over the next 4 years to deliver walking, wheeling and cycling schemes, enough for 500 miles of new walking and cycling routes. And that's in addition to almost £300 million of funding, which we announced in February 2025. In November, we launched a consultation to develop the third cycling and walking investment strategy, and that recognised the need to address the barriers to active travel, including for women and girls. It proposed 2 new objectives to support long-term vision for active travel, to ensure that people are safe to travel actively and ensure that people feel it is an easy choice. Now, the consultation closed on the 15th of December. We're obviously looking very carefully at all the comments that have been received, and the final strategy will be published this spring. Since its establishment in 2022, Active Travel England, ATE, has worked with local authorities to help them make walking, wheeling and cycling a safe and attractive choice for everyday trips. And that's included overseeing £435 million of investment to deliver more than 400 miles of routes and hundreds of safer crossings and junctions. ATE have commenced a project focused on the need to better design streets for women and girls and support local authorities in the delivery of this. They're also working with Living Streets and with Footways to pilot an approach to develop walking network plans. Through this project, women have highlighted issues when walking, including very familiar poor lighting, isolated routes and limited visibility, which strongly shape their willingness to walk and influenced route prioritisation. And those findings will form an important part of the evidence base for planning walking networks that work for everyone. And I really welcome the examples of good practice that have been highlighted by a number of honourable members this afternoon, including members from West Yorkshire. Now, this year, through ATE, we've provided £2.5 million to Cycling UK to deliver the Big Bike Revival, which is now in its 10th year and has reached over 500,000 people. The Big Bike Revival programme helps people across England get back on their bikes and experience the many benefits of cycling. And since it began in 2015, more than half of participants said they now feel safer cycling, and 49% of participants have been women. Women who've taken part in the programme have described being made to feel comfortable, feeling a boost in the confidence and self-esteem, and feeling empowered. I know that last October, Cycling UK organised My Ride, Our Right, and I think approximately 60 women-led glow rides took place across the country to increase the visibility of women's cycling and demand better infrastructure. In my own constituency, cycling group Women in Tandem and Pedals organised rides, and they're doing great work to give more women the confidence to ride a bike, especially or including after dark. As they say, that's Women in Tandem, cycling should feel liberating, not intimidating. Hear, hear. We know that good street design can contribute to helping women feel safe when walking and cycling and running, and enable safe access to public transport. We're currently working with MHCLG to update the Manual for Streets, which was first published in 2007, and that will include advice on aspects of street design that can help improve personal safety and perceptions of safety. It's how safe is it? How safe does it feel? And I also welcome that... Will, yeah.
The Minister's coming on to make this point, but would she recognise that, despite the fact everything she's saying is fantastic on active travel, and I recognise the Manual for Streets point, but if the overarching framework for all of this, which is the National Planning Policy Framework, doesn't pay regard to women and girls' safety, then actually it's much harder for those subsets like active travel to be enacted.
I thank her for her contribution, and as I said, we are working with our colleagues in the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government to ensure that we have a coherent approach. And I also welcome the Liberal Democrats spokesperson's support for our proposals to tackle pavement parking. Of course, it's not just about safety on the street, as my honourable friend for Edinburgh South West highlighted. It's about having the opportunity to walk, wheel, cycle and run in our green spaces and parks, on canal towpaths and greenways. Natural England's Green Infrastructure Planning and Design Guide offers detailed guidance on creating accessible green spaces, and specifically for teenage girls it emphasises the need for designing spaces that are not only safe and inclusive but also comfortable and welcoming. Sport England are also running campaigns challenging prejudice to make clear that sport is for everyone. This has included This Girl Can and Let's Lift the Curfew campaigns, the latter of which saw 320 local events taking place in October to amplify women's voices and overcome barriers that prevent women from being active outdoors. To conclude, I thank again my honourable friend for raising this important issue today. It's been wonderful to see the level of contribution and the interest that's been shown in the debate. I look forward to continuing to work with her, with other honourable members here this afternoon, and indeed with my colleagues across government to take further action on this important issue and ensure that for our daughters the opportunity to go out and walk and run and cycle is not the same as perhaps it has been for our generation. We can and must and will do better.
Jessica Sato to wind up.
Thank you, Ms Jardine, and I'd like to thank all of the contributions from honourable members to this debate today, and to the Minister for her remarks and her ongoing work on this issue. This forms a key part of the Government's ambition to halve violence against women and girls, and we will look very much forward to working with her to improve women's safety in this area. I'd like to just finish with this quote from the Belonging Forum. They say, "When women feel unable to move freely in public spaces, this limits opportunities for connection, reinforces isolation and undermines a sense of belonging. We must work to tackle that."
The question is that this House has considered women's safety while walking, wheeling, cycling and running. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I'll do that again. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order. The sitting is suspended until 4 p.m.